Welcome back to the Pro Series podcast. This is episode 129, and today's guest is Jeanne Collins. She is the owner of JerMar Designs. She's an award-winning interior designer who left the corporate world to start this business, and we talk all about interior design, why she left her corporate job to become a award-winning interior designer. We talk about some past projects, some struggles in interior design, and all of the above. But before you get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 129 with Jeanne Collins.
Jeanne, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today. So excited to talk to another designer and talk about your business, talk about how you got into it. But just thank you for taking the time.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get to be on a designer podcast. I do lots of podcasts, but they're not all designers. So designers are my favorite.
Okay. Well, we'll jump into a topic at the end more about podcasting in general. But let's get into you and how you got into the design world. Was it something that you've always wanted to do your whole life, or did you grow up in a family that had a little design in it?
No, no, and
No.
no, no, and no.
Oh, okay.
I grew up, if you had asked me, was I creative or artistic, I would have said absolutely not in any way. And so I went to school. I have an undergraduate degree in communications and a master's degree in business. And I actually spent 22 years in advertising sales, running a sales team for a public company and working out of New York with the East Coast territory. And I did that until right before I was 50. So I did it for 22 years. And right before I turned 50, I got fired from that nice big VP job. And it made me really think about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I was turning 50 and it was the beginning of COVID. And
Oh.
I really I was so burnt from working for a public company. You're only as good as your last quarter. And when you run a big sales team, you're really only as good as like the last month. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
really tired of it, tired of the travel. I was a single mom. And so I really did a lot of reflecting and a lot of reading and a lot of networking and decided that if I ever really wanted to follow my passion and do something that I really loved, which I did, now was the time. No time like the present. So I decided to go back to school for interior design and started my own business all at the same time. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was, I got fired just about 4 years ago. And in May of this year, we'll hit the 4 year mark for my business.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
when did you get bitten with the interior design bug during that process?
Yeah, so before that, I was always a little bit interested in it, like with, places that I rented, places that I owned. I bought my first house when I was, probably 29,
Hmm.
and did a lot of work there and really enjoyed it. But it wasn't until I bought my first house, which was a little over 7 years ago, that I really got into it. Because then I really got into the construction. I did a whole lot of renovating. I owned the house by myself because I was single. So I really had the chance to decorate, to make it mine. I took on 2 rather large construction projects at my house, and I really loved it. And then I started helping friends and family that wanted to do projects, and so I started helping them, consulting with their construction projects, and so it really was a passion. And when I lost my job, I thought, "Oh my goodness, if I could just play with, like, fabric and wallpaper all day, I'd be so happy." Of
Yeah.
course, because you've been an interior designer, that is not what we do all day. Like, that
Nope.
is a fraction. So it's so funny. I tell people, like, that's why I started this, because I wanted to do that all day. And I'm like, if I do that one day a month for maybe 2 hours, that's a lot. I don't
Yeah.
get to spend a lot of time actually doing that. Um, but that's what drove me to it. And I loved construction. And I still do. I loved architecture, still do, and still do a lot of that work in my business. So it really was the reflecting on, if you could do anything and it wasn't about money, what would your passion be and what would you
Hmm.
do? And interior design was like a no-brainer first thing I definitely said. And so I just kind of figured out how to jump all in and make that be my job. And so now it is. Here we are 4 years later. And yeah, I own, an award-winning interior design firm. It's kind of crazy.
It's all meant to be. You were meant to lose that job, and it doesn't make sense at the time, but it all
Right.
comes out.
It does. It all works out in the end. It does.
Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, my business experience really helps me.
Oh, I bet.
It makes there are so many designers who can design beautiful things but are not good business people and
Yeah.
don't have a lot of good business sense. And
Mhm.
so from a client perspective, because I was my client, I was the business executive who would happily pay someone to do things for me that I didn't have the time to do or the skill set to do. It makes a big difference that I come from that background. So I
Hmm.
understand my clients' worlds. Most of my clients are executives or entrepreneurs, and I understand their world very well because that was my world. And so I
Hmm.
can have a process that aligns with how they need to work. And not all designers can do that.
Oh, 100%. And you're a salesperson as a designer too.
Oh, every day, all day.
And
Yes.
I know so many designers, like you just said, there's great designers, but they can't sell a job because they have
Right.
none of those skills.
Right. Yes. Or they don't, I mean, in design school, they don't teach you anything about actually running a business. That's not
Mm-mm,
part of what design school is.
mm-mm.
Design school is about, the theory of design and how to make things work and layers and colors and Photoshop and color theory and all that other stuff. But they don't actually teach you about how do you run a business. And so I actually had to hire an interior design business coach when I started so that I could understand the business side of the interior design industry because that wasn't the industry I came from. And, each industry has their own nuances and how they work on the back end. And I knew nothing. And here I was going to run a business. I was like, I got to figure this out. So I did actually have to hire someone to understand it. But a lot of designers don't. And a lot of
Mm-mm.
designers just kind of learn through trial and error. Or they work for a small firm, but they might not learn all the nuances that you really need to know to run a business. And
Yeah,
so, school's not teaching you that. That's for sure.
no, not at all. So were
Yeah.
you going to school and you had your company at the same time? Is that
I
how you
was.
said?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I did two programs. I did Parsons and I did the Institute of Art and Design in New York. And I signed up to do both their programs. And because it was COVID, they were doing them online. And so I signed up to do both of them. And one of them was on a schedule. Parsons is on a schedule. It's on trimesters, I think, at the time. And the Institute of Art and Design, you can do it at your own pace. And I was like, no brainer. I'm not working. I'll be done with this in 2 months. That one took me the longest. It took me 11 months to finish that one. It was so
Oh,
hard.
wow.
It was really hard. Um, but it was a lot. So yeah, I was doing both programs at the same time. And then in May of that year, I started my business and had to figure out how to get clients and how to build a website and a portfolio. And yeah, that was fun. So a fun little story for people who were listening, because this people always say is like so smart of me and interesting. It was COVID. And so in my town, we have a mom's Facebook group, which is a very active group now it's up to over 3,000 moms. And it's a very, very active group. You need a plumber, you need anything. You want a hotel in Paris, you can post and you will get tons of responses from these moms of where to go. So it's a very trusted resource. So I decided I was going to post on there that I was looking for people that I could design for free.
Hmm.
I would charge them. I was looking to build my portfolio. I was willing to design for free and not charge for my time and not charge for my designs. I would purchase product just like every other designer with the commission or a markup on it so I could make a little money. But I was willing to design for free and was looking for moms who might have some projects and some things they wanted done to their house to help build my portfolio. And I posted it and I thought, maybe in a couple of days I'll hear from a few people. In 10 minutes, I had 35 people who had responded with projects, with work, like real work. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, so my calendar is like filling up right away, having all of these conversations with these moms about different projects and different work of different scales. And one of the women actually had a full living room she had a rug that she loved, and that was it, and an empty living room, this very large home. And she ended up being challenging in the beginning. She was like, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And I kept DMing her. And finally, I was like, I am so frustrated with this woman. I go, all you have to do is have money to spend. Money to spend. I will do the rest. And she was like, okay, let's talk. And she ended up being my first full room project. It was amazing. And then I went on to do all this other stuff in her house. But it was such an interesting time because of COVID. Everybody had a need for wanting to
Hmm.
design, and everyone had time, and they didn't care that it took me a long time to design a room. That was on me. But they were really open to this idea that, oh, wow, they could sit in the comfort of their own home. And most of it was honestly like Zoom design.
Oh,
So, which was, before all this doing stuff
different
remotely was
world.
really
Yeah.
popular. Right. And so I'm like, here I am. I am not a designer. Like I'm learning to be a designer and I'm learning via Zoom. It was so
But
interesting.
that is interesting.
It
And
is. It
it all started
is.
on a Facebook group, pretty
At a
much.
Facebook page. Right. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And that woman's project, I'm still so proud of the work I did for them. And it was amazing that, that she came to me, and I did a couple other things for some other people during that time, which really helped me like really grow a business.
Oh,
So
I
the
bet.
following by, 6 months later, I actually had like a real website, a real business, which was great. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good.
So, what advice would you have for someone? I think no matter what age you leave your current job and you go for your passion job or what you want to do for the rest of your life, you're starting at zero. And that's a very scary thing for most people, especially when you have a family, you have kids, you have a
Terrifying.
house.
Yeah.
What advice or what got you through that period?
A couple of things, being really clear about what you want to do and why you want to do it. And being really committed to it, because there are going to be a lot of bumps in the road and chances where you might back out. And then that's just going to be worse because you're going to feel like a failure. So be really sure that that's what you want to do and why you want to do it, and you're doing it for the right reasons. The second thing is find coaches, business services, networking groups, places that you can join that have people that are already experts in that field. And then the third thing you should do is ask questions of everyone you meet. And there was so much I didn't know about the back end of the business of design. And I would just call vendors, I would call showrooms, and I would ask to talk to the trade manager and ask if I could have their time. And I would just explain my story. I'm 50 years old, changing careers midlife, starting an interior design business. I really know nothing about the back end of design. And one showroom manager spent 2.5 hours with me explaining furniture and explaining North Carolina to me. I didn't know what I know about North Carolina. I'd never been there before. What I understand about all these brands. My Kravitz sales rep, still one of my favorite reps. I am still very loyal to her because she spent an hour on the phone with me one day just explaining receivers and explaining the process and explaining pricing and explaining what net pricing is and just like explaining some of the back end of the business stuff to
Hmm.
me that I didn't know. And it was so helpful. And then she connected me with other vendors at other companies that she knew really well. And she's like, call them and they can explain this side and how that company does it. And she was so nice. And so, of course, I'm actually very loyal to her because in the very beginning, she was so understanding and nice. And I think if you ask, you will find that people actually genuinely want to help you.
Hmm.
They
And
really do.
that's the thing
They
people
do.
are scared to ask.
People are scared to ask, and people genuinely want to help. And I
Mhm.
think if you are authentic and genuine with why you're asking, and understand that there might be some things they might not want to tell you, like how did they charge or things like that. And you're going to have to find that out somewhere else, or how are they making money? But there are ways around those questions that you can ask
Mhm.
about, what's the average profit margin that I should be having for a business in this industry? There are things like that that you could be asking for your territory, stuff like that. And I think the more you're willing to be inquisitive and ask questions, the more you find there's a lot of free help out there
Oh,
of people that
absolutely.
want to help you.
Yeah. I was at a
It's awesome.
networking event last week talking to a designer who is just starting out. She's starting her new business, and she was talking about how she would love to have some type of like design cohort in the Pittsburgh area to talk about with other business owners, interior design business owners, and just talk about business and how to grow and all that stuff. And I got into we got into a conversation about competing designers
Hmm.
and competing
Yep.
businesses. And I've always been under the mindset is there's no way I could design every single house in Pittsburgh. There's no way that
Right.
one designer could do a whole entire city
Right.
of work.
Yes.
You
Yes. There's
couldn't do
more
it.
work. Yes.
So why not come together? But the one thing was there's a lot of people in the area that do think the opposite. They think
Hmm.
they don't want to help someone else that's a competitor.
Right.
How do
Right.
you
Yep.
stand with that? And did you have anybody in your area that did actually help you out?
Yeah. So that is such an interesting question. So I'll answer it a couple ways. Um, First thing is I joined a business academy for interior designers that was across the country. And I did it for that sole purpose, thinking that if I'm talking to designers in other places, they won't feel competitive. And
Mm,
therefore, they will be much more likely to share, how do you price? How do you do this? How do you scope out a big job? How do you do a contract? How do you do these things? And so I joined that big group, and it was true. Like, we don't all have the same economics. So, for example, there'd be people who lived in small towns in Ohio, and for $50,000, they're doing half a house. I'm like, I live right outside of New York City. For $50,000, I can't even do a room here. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't work. The cost of these homes is so high, and the cost of labor is so high. So, however, they were really great in terms of helping me understand just dealing with clients, dealing with vendors, dealing with situations. And it was such an open group of people that I ended up making a lot of friends. And ironically, my best friend from that group lives 10 minutes from my house here. So she
Mm.
happened to live here, ironically. And then my second best friend lives about an hour and a half away from me, even though I met people all over the country from that networking group. And there are groups on Facebook designed for interior designers that you can join. And if you really actively participate, you will find a network of people. I will also say, depending on where you live, so I'm very fortunate. I live somewhere where there are a ton of designers. There are no lack of interior designers. In my town alone, there are probably 30 of us, and I don't live in a big town. Um, However, I live in a community that is very, very helpful of each other because of the fact that people are very aware that there are so many of us and there is so much work here.
Mm.
So people don't compete here. And it's part of the culture that has been built over where I work. Um, so I'm fortunate that we have that. So, for example, like this Thursday, I'm doing a luxury interior designer panel, and there's four of us. We're four interior designers, all with very successful businesses, getting on a panel to speak to 100 people. And there's no competition between us. That's not what it's about. It's about educating people about the world of design and getting them excited about it. Um, so I would say to the woman that you met at that networking event, I would reach out to her vendor reps, her field reps, because your field reps know all the designers. I would reach out to your field rep, and I would ask your field rep if she would be or he would be willing to provide names of designers who you think would be willing to just network, because
Mm.
we all like to have people to talk to about our businesses and about
Exactly.
trends and about industries and about what's new with what vendor and how did you deal with this and how are you, just even the subject of how are we dealing with freight these days, like
Hmm.
how freight pricing was, you know a year or two ago is very different than what it is now. So how are we all dealing with that? Receivers, though, haven't pulled back their pricing for delivery, even though freight costs have gone down. So there are lots of designers. So I would ask your field rep for to network and
Hmm.
introduce you to other people, and just start out small and build a small little group. If you can get three people who want to talk to you and meet for coffee, those three people will be just as excited as you are.
Exactly. And my whole thing with that is I did mostly kitchens
Yeah.
and I didn't do a lot of bathrooms. It's not that I didn't get a lot of people asking for it. I just didn't really like bathrooms, remodeling
Right.
bathrooms. But I had a friend that did. So
Yeah.
we could refer each other for different
Right.
things that you
Yes.
specialize in because not every designer specializes in everything.
No, not at all. And not every designer, like we have here, not every designer will even deal with construction. We have lots of
Mhm.
designers that don't want anything to do with that. And they're just
Oh,
like internal finishes, and that's it. They
yeah.
want nothing to do with the whole house renovation or dealing with a contractor or dealing with the architects. Like, they want nothing to do with that process at all. They're okay maybe to get hired with those other people in place, but they don't want to have to be, project managing on the side with all of the details of all of that. And I
Mhm.
don't blame them, because I do that and it's sometimes a nightmare. But,
Oh, yeah.
and to your point, everybody has a different aesthetic too.
Yeah.
Like, people like designers in general can design any style. That's what we're trained to do. But
Yeah.
we all have aesthetics that we tend to gravitate towards or like. And there are lots of businesses that are very clear. You go to their website and everything looks exactly the same. And that's okay.
Hmm.
That's designer style. You go to other designers' websites, everything looks different. So there's also a lot of different aesthetic, but that doesn't mean you can't build a great network of local designers that you can powwow with, you know, have dinner with, once every few months, stuff kind of thing like that. Have Zoom
Absolutely.
calls, Zoom happy hour, Zoom coffee, make it easy. Because people in general do actually want to help other people.
Hmm. Yeah. And just like we kind of talked out on before we hit record was networking and networking like on podcast wise. You said you were on 30 podcasts, you
I
said
think
this
so,
year,
yeah.
or
The last few months, yeah. Hmm.
okay. See,
Yeah, it's a
I
lot.
mean, I know I love podcasting, but why why do you say yes to being a guest on a podcast? Is it the whole networking thing? You want to learn more? You want to tell your story? What is it?
It's a lot of different reasons. It depends on what the podcast is. But,
Yeah.
I wrote a book. And so I wrote a book and published a book last year. So
Oh, okay.
I started my podcast journey to talk about my book.
Gotcha.
And so, but it's expanded because my book and my business, it's all intertwined. It's all
Yeah.
part of what I do. It's all part of my passion. So, and I talk on because there's so many different things, subjects that I can talk about or want to talk about that are in my book and in my life. And so
Hmm.
some podcasts will be focused on wellness, some will be focused on women in business, some will be focused on, changing careers midlife. How do you do that? Some are focused on interior design. So some are focused, truly on like mindset and wellness and nutrition and things like that. So the subject matter of the podcast vary greatly. So for me, it's very interesting because I touch on all of those things in my book, and all of those are, passion projects of mine. So, and as a result of doing the podcast, it's great to be able to share my message on a larger platform. And the networking and connecting has been amazing. The people that
Hmm.
I have met, and I found everyone who has a podcast, everyone has a story, and everyone has a story as to how they got there. And podcasters live all over the world. It's
Hmm.
like you live in Pittsburgh, you're close compared to most of the podcasters I talk to. People are living all
Yeah.
over the world, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like it brings this large world really close together. And
Hmm.
I've met many people. I've been introduced to people. I've been introduced to podcasts that I never knew existed that I follow all the time. So I think it's just such a great way to connect with other people that have an interest on a subject matter that I do as well.
Oh, absolutely. I always think it's cool to be able to talk to someone, especially when I'm talking to a designer like you that's not in my area. We have the same profession, but we're not in the same area. So we do have some of the similar challenges and perspectives, but we differ in different ways as well. Because like my pricing on materials and stuff is probably going to be less than what you're
Right.
up there,
Right. Yeah,
or labor
exactly.
costs. So it's kind
Right.
of cool
Yes.
how you get around the hearing how you get around those type of uh, issues and kind of hearing what I have for issues and just kind of
Right.
bouncing each other ideas off each other and stuff is kind of a cool thing.
It is. And I also find that I also, I learn about new things. I mean, there's so many small companies that make so many cool products. And there are, because of COVID, and I really loved this, there are so many smaller companies that are manufacturing products here locally,
Yeah.
and whether it's making cabinets or making tables or making hardware, making lamps. And it's so fun to find out about some of these smaller shops that are very design focused. They'll make anything in the world you want. They're incredibly customer focused. And clients really like, buying locally. They really
Okay.
like something that's, not just made in the United States, but made close by kind of
Yeah.
thing. And they think it's cool when you're like, so I found this really cool little niche company. Look how crazy these lights are. They only make like 8 things, but how great is this? So I think
Yeah.
I find out about things like that a lot from networking and talking to other people in other places, because it might be something that's come across my desk, but you might know about it, might be your new favorite thing. And it's great to share that.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your business. Your name and where do you have a showroom and everything,
I do
or
not.
you
Nope.
know? Okay, is that a
No,
goal?
no,
No. Okay, I
no.
don't blame you.
Retail is one thing that is not on my list. It is
I
not on my
don't
bucket
blame
list
you.
at all.
I don't blame you. So you just
Yeah,
stick with the online presence and kind of
right.
just travel to client's house.
I do. Yep. I travel to clients' houses. I have an office in my own home, which I do also use as sort of like a studio showcase if people want to come to my house. And so most of it is me going to them. I really don't take my clients to a showroom. I find that's pretty painful. It just gives clients too much choice. And so
Mhm.
part of my design process is what I deliver back to you is X number of choices. And, if you give clients too many choices, it's overwhelming.
It
And it's
is.
like, and you might have this problem too. When I design for myself, it takes me forever to make a decision for myself. I can make a decision for a client in a heartbeat. And the problem for me is that I see it all. And so it makes it so hard. But for them, if I just hone it down into a tunnel and with a design vision in mind, it's much easier for them to make a decision. So I bring everything to my clients unless they really want to go sit on something. And most of the time, though, that means they need to go to New York. And so most of the time they decide that they're just going to take my word for it and not go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause we're close to
I
New York, but it's not like it's an hour plus away, you know?
yeah. I second you with the retail thing. I've only had experience of being a designer in in a retail platform.
Yeah.
So I would take out the samples, like maybe two countertops, two cabinet colors, all that stuff, put it out on the table. But we are also in a showroom that has towers of countertop behind us.
Stuff
A
everywhere.
whole, yeah. So they're gonna see something else and be like, can we look over there?
Mhm.
Appointment that should have been an hour turns into 4 hours long.
Exactly. And then there's too much choice, and then they can't make a decision. So
Hmm.
very, very rarely will I take a client anywhere, to be honest.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's just too different. There's just too much choice. I took clients into New York City just last week, and they are one of the only clients I will actually take into a showroom. And he's a little bit older. He's about 80, and he really wants to sit in the furniture.
Mm,
And they buy, he buys chairs for $25,000 and sofas for 35. So you know what? He can sit in the sofa,
yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
in that sense, I'm like, okay, fine. You want to go sit in it? We'll go sit in it. So I go in advance and I scope out what I want them to see, and then I bring them in. And even then, like we only went to 3 showrooms on purpose because I'd already gone in advance. And even then, by the end, he was like, there is so much choice here. I was like, there is. And
Hmm.
we only went into 3 stores.
Yeah, that's smart that you went in and scouted that out and kind of
I did.
that's a designer that a lot of designers don't do that. They don't do their homework for that part of it. And that's
Well, for this, you have to, if you're going to take someone to the D&D building, you got to go like very focused on what you're going to go and do there, because otherwise it's just a free for all. There's so many stores and it's so confusing for everybody. So I had already gone and picked out, the 5 chairs I wanted him to sit in and try.
mhm,
And it was really helpful. The first one he sat in, that was it. And it was helpful for him to I don't think if he had seen a picture of it, he would have ever liked it.
mhm,
Um, but sitting in it, he felt how comfortable it was. It was for him for his library, and it was so comfortable. And then he was able to sit in other chairs of different styles and be able to say, no, it's
mhm.
not as comfortable. And then in the end, we went back in again one more time and sat on the first one. He was like, yep, this is it. I'm like, great, decision made, all good. Now we
That's
move
all.
on.
Yeah, that's almost like I taking customers to I always hate taking customers like countertop showrooms or tile showrooms because
So
every
much
single one is
choice.
a different price and it's going to be out of the budget. And it's
Right.
so hard to tell them that in the store. Like usually there's,
Hmm.
someone walking around with you and you
Right.
can't say, you can't do that. It's too much money type of deal.
Right.
Or you
Right.
just don't
No,
know the price. So you're
right.
wasting time.
Right. You don't. And a lot of times you don't know the price. And there are very few stores here that actually have the price on anything.
Mm,
Um, you know, if you have a good rep, I found if you have a good rep here and you tell them the price, per square foot that you're trying to stay in with tile, they can help guide the client in certain directions. But still, a tile store has so much choice. And it's like anything else. The client will innately find something they love that is 3 times out of their budget. That is just the way it is. And so
yeah,
anything else that you produce is going to be not liked as much because it's not as great as that limestone that they love. And it's like, but that limestone is not in the budget for the mudroom. So
exactly.
and nothing will compare. And so they're always a little bit disappointed, even in the end product, because they've seen this shiny thing that they want and, knew they had to settle for something less. So I, that's why I bring the samples to them, let them see it. I also think it's important for them to see it in their spaces because everybody's house has different light. Every room is
Mhm.
different light. You've got whatever's going on the walls. How does the light come in? It makes such a difference. So something that might look gray in a showroom, you could bring it home and be like, oh, wow, there's a lot of green in that. I didn't even
Yeah.
like green, but then when you
Well,
bring it to their space, it might have more green in it. Its showroom lights are not exactly the same as people's homes.
no, very, very rarely.
Very
There's
different.
some high-end showrooms that will have they'll have temperature controlling lights, but
Right.
still you have all the surrounding. No
You do.
retail space is built like a house. It's not going to help
No.
you at all.
No, I mean, and they all have gigantic ceilings, and a sofa looks so tiny.
Yeah.
When I did take so back to my story about my clients that I took to New York, she is lying on a sofa and she is arguing with me about the dimensions of her current sofa. And I have a picture, like my assistant took a picture, she measured it all. I have the picture with all the dimensions, and she was like lying on this sofa. She's like, there is no way this sofa, my sofa is bigger than this one. I'm like, it is not. It is not. I'm like, it's just that your sofa is in a smaller room and this sofa is in a huge showroom. So
Yeah.
this sofa in this showroom is looking small to you, but it's not. If I go put that into your room, it's no longer going to look small. And we went home and she calls me maybe 20 minutes after I dropped her off. She goes, you were right about the measurements of my sofa. I'm like, I know I was.
I'm surprised she even like admitted that.
I'm like, I know I was right. I was like, I know I was right. I'm like, but she's like arguing with me that it's bigger. And I'm like, but it's
Yeah.
really not. It's just, it looks bigger and it feels bigger. But in the showroom, this sofa looks tiny because the showroom
Mhm.
is enormous. Like the sectionals that were in the showroom, I'm like, this wouldn't fit anywhere in your home, but
Mhm.
it doesn't look like it's that big. But when you go to measure it, I'm like, you don't have enough room for any of this stuff in that space you want. So it's interesting. It's deceiving. The showroom is very deceiving.
Absolutely. Well, Jeanne,
Yeah.
I want to finish off on where people could find you on your website, social
Yeah.
media, and whatever else you want to promote. Maybe your book title and where they could
Yeah.
buy it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So my book. So my business, we'll start with my business first. So my
Okay.
business is JerMar Designs, JerMar Designs.com. So you can find me online. You can follow me on Instagram. I post almost every day. So it's at JerMar, JerMar_designs. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube.
All of
A
it.
lot of that's under Jeanne Collins. So JeanneCollnsct for Connecticut. And my book is called 2 Feet In, Lessons from an All-In Life. And it's a memoir. It's available on Amazon. It's available in an audiobook, anywhere where you would get an audiobook. So I encourage people to give it a read. Everyone says it's a good book. So I think it's worth it. It has interior design tips, a lot of life tips, and it reads like a novel. So it's a pretty quick read. So give it a try. And DM me, let me know, write a review, let me know how it is. I love to hear from people.
Absolutely. Well, Jeanne, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk about your design career, and maybe we'll revisit and have another episode further down the line.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.